Can you even imagine it? The fear and sadness and utter failure that Peter and the other disciples were feeling. It had been a long week. Arriving in Jerusalem to wild praise and high hopes, and then watching that dream be crushed. Actually, it had been a long 3 years. Exciting and mysterious and dangerous and astounding years. But long 3 years anyway. 3 years since Jesus walked into their lives and turned it all upside down. Since Peter left everything that he knew to follow this man. 3 years of struggling to understand this teacher's strange and radical wisdom. Struggling to stay alive and out of trouble when enemies seemed to come at them from all sides. And for what? Jesus was dead. And so were their hopes. Can you hear it? Clank. The metal bolt sliding into place and locking the door. Now, locking doors wasn't a common practice in first century Judea. If you lived in populated areas like Jerusalem, where the disciples were staying and hiding out, you left your doors unlocked. To lock them was to look suspicious, to look like you had something to hide. Well, Jesus' disciples had something to hide themselves. It had been less than 3 days since Jesus had been executed, cruelly and mercilessly, on a wooden cross. And oh, how they had failed him. Peter, especially, might have winced as he remembered denying that he even knew Jesus 3 times. Then the others hadn't done any better. They all fled when Jesus was arrested. Can you see it in your mind as Peter looked around the room, thinking that this is what it had all come to? The 12, well, 11 now, that Judas was gone. The 12 and several of the other disciples too, all of them crammed into a small, sweltering hot room, the door bolted, the shutters slammed shut over the one narrow window that was cut into the stone wall. Actually, Thomas was missing too. And I can imagine Peter saying a little prayer that his friend was safe and was trying to make his way to them, unnoticed and safe. But really, they all were just waiting for that moment that they knew was going to come when the authorities would come for them too, and they also would be nailed up like their leader. Now, many of the people in the room had surrounded themselves around Mary, who was trying to convince them that she had been to Jesus' tomb that very morning and found it empty, and even that she had seen the teacher alive and well. But they were skeptical. They told her, when we're sad, when we grieve, we sometimes see things that we wish we could see. But I think that she was adamant, that she never foundered, that she didn't give in, she didn't back down. After all, Jesus had told them that he would die, and he died. And Jesus had told them that he would return. And now she knew that he had. She had seen him. But surely some of the group, they were still having a hard time just believing that Jesus had died. Maybe Peter, for instance, wondered how his newfound Messiah, the one who was supposed to save his people from the Roman oppressors, how could he be wiped out so quickly, so pitifully? And now he was supposed to believe that Jesus had risen from the dead. Well, he didn't have time for fantasy. As leader of this frightened and splintering group, he had big problems to solve, problems of survival and of safety. And he might have looked around at his friends, and some of them hopeful from the words of Mary, some of them scared, a few off in the corner whispering amongst themselves. And imagine how he felt. The air in the room was hot and stifling, hard to breathe, sweat trickling down his face, his clothes damp and sticky. Feeling dizzy with fear and anxiety, overwhelmed with responsibility. And then, feeling something like a cool, light breeze. And looking up in alarm to make sure the door was still closed and locked and the shutter was still closed tight on the window. Yes, everything was as it was. But no, something in the room was different. And everyone could feel it. And they all looked around, and their eyes landed on a lone figure on one side of the room, his clothes dazzling white, and his face, it was the teacher. It was Jesus. But it couldn't be. It couldn't possibly be. And confusion and fear and hope bubbled in every soul in that room. And then Jesus spoke. Peace be with you. The first words, the first wish of Jesus upon seeing his disciples was that they should be at peace. Now, passing the peace, that was the common way that you greeted someone in that day and age. But this was something different, something special. And the peace that Jesus was bestowing on his disciples, well, in part it was an individual peace, an inner peace, a personal peace. But more importantly, it was a community peace, a passing of the peace, a peace that could be passed from Jesus to his disciples and onward, a peace to be shared and grown and multiplied. Peace be with you, Jesus said.